I do want to start today with reviewing some stuff with you all. I know I was out last class. I'm sorry. This is my first day back in a couple of days. As I mentioned, kind of when some of you were coming in, over winter break, they re-imaged your computers, which basically makes a blank slate. So there are no apps left on the computer when it's re-imaged. It completely deletes all the student profiles and files, and that is supposed to really help your computer be quicker because every single student that's ever logged into your computer has a profile, and all of their files and things that save on there really bog it down. So hopefully your computer does run smoother, but they have to reinstall everything. They had reinstalled Adobe. I know some of the computers had not installed all of the Adobe apps on time like they were supposed to, but they at least had Adobe set up. So if you need help installing something, like if you notice Photoshop or Illustrator for some reason aren't actually installed, let me know and I can help you do that. However, they did not install the Wacom tablet software, which is really simple, really quick, really small software. But I don't have the privileges as your teacher, as like a computer password administrator, to actually install any of the software myself. So I had put in a ticket on the first day of school about it. They had resolved the ticket yesterday saying that the tablets were up and running. If you look underneath your Windows icon, my computer is not a good judge because I did not have mine re-imaged. But if you go down to the Windows icon, you should be able to search or scroll down to the very bottom and look for the actual Wacom tablet software. It should just be listed under W. You can also just hit the little search icon and type in WAC and see if Wacom tablet properties comes up. At least one person has already said it's not up on their computer. Does anybody happen to see it? Does anybody have it? Does it exist? Wacom. Wacom is the brand name of your drawing tablets.
Oh yeah, mine came up when I turned away.
Okay, so a couple of you at least have it. If you don't have it, I'm working on it. I promise. I'm trying to get it fixed. There are a couple other things that didn't get installed like they were supposed to, but that was kind of the big one that most people wanted to use. So if your tablet's not working, let me know. You can try and log into another computer, and it may be installed on that one. Whenever they install this software, they just run it as like a script, and they just let it run where it's supposed to install on every computer, but it doesn't always work on every single one completely. And so that's where we have some computers without certain Adobe and some computers without certain Wacom like software installed. So if you notice that yours doesn't have something, let me know and I will work on that computer specifically to the best of my ability. Okay. Now, aside from that, I know I was out last class, but the first time that I saw you, I introduced to you this infographics project, bless you, and I had you working on a brainstorming worksheet. I know most of you got done with the worksheet before the first day of class was over, and a lot of you went ahead and did your sketches. Most of your sketches that I've looked at, I haven't looked at all of them, look really good. They look really complete. I hope if you have not already, I know a couple of you have been absent yourselves, that you have found some references and icon imagery to kind of help you figure out what you want your look to be. Everybody had the option to pick a different theme. The themes were limited, but a lot of you have picked different stuff. So your things are probably going to look very different from your neighbors. Depending on what topic you picked, you may have a whole lot more text than someone else. Some of these topics are very like text intensive because they have a lot of stuff that has to be explained. And others are more of just like step by step quick things like how to do CPR or the Heimlich maneuver tends to be just kind of a set of quick steps versus some of the other stuff that you happen to see on here, like how the Electoral College works, is probably going to have more text to it. So, depending on how much text you have, that is going to greatly alter kind of what your infographic looks like overall because that means you have to work with more stuff. Okay, I want to remind you of a few parameters though. You are stuck with this semi hideous color palette. Okay, I want you to try and do the best that you can with certain like stipulations. Most of the time, if you do ever create something for a client, they're not going to let you get to make whatever you want. They're going to have things that are pre chosen, like brand colors or brand fonts. And a lot of times, whatever your client wants is hideous and awful, and you just kind of have to make do. So you can use any variation of this color palette. You can make slightly lighter or darker versions of any one of these colors that you see here, the beiges, the cyan, like blue greens, and the reddish pinks. You can make slightly different versions, but you shouldn't have anything that is completely different. So no like bright green, no orange, no like solid blue or anything like that. Okay, you are also required to use a set of specific fonts. You have a choice of using either Cooper Black or Century Schoolbook for your big text, your titles, your things that are really large. And then for your subtitles, your body text, your paragraphs, you can use either Century Gothic or Franklin Gothic. And you can use anything within those realms. So you can use any of their italics, their bolds, if they have heavy or medium. You can use any of those different styles with those fonts. What I mostly want from you today, and this is what I wanted out of your sketch if you hadn't done it already, is I want you to create a wire frame. So I don't want to go back through the whole slideshow that I went over before, but I did move up to this week the basic info page. And if you remember on this info page, I had a little slide all about the wire frame. And let me pull it up a little bit larger really quick. Excuse me. Okay. So, what I want you to start by doing in Illustrator is I want you to set up your document. You are limited to an 11 by 17 sheet of paper, which is a pretty standard poster size. Excuse me. It's not as big as like a movie poster, but it's a pretty standard printable size that most printer companies will do for you at a reasonable rate. And that's part of why we're doing it at this size. So you're going to have to use not only a color palette and text that's preset for you, but you've got to figure out how to fit it inside of a very specific shape. Now, you can turn it horizontal or vertical, whatever you feel like works best for you. But what I want you to start out with is creating a wire frame. I know you have tons of text. Okay. The amount of text you have is going to dictate kind of what the general structure of your infographic is. But what I mean by wireframe is I want you to start out with some basic blocks and shapes and things that kind of outline stuff. Okay. You don't have to worry about the colors immediately if you don't want to, but you do need to think about things like, are there boxes or shapes around your text? Are things divided with lines or with other types of like elements? Think about all of those different sort of things that will create a more visually appealing infographic. Okay, you can actually just Google infographic wireframe. It's such a common like actual statements in graphic design that you'll see all kinds of different layouts that people have done for infographics, and you can get some kind of different ideas if you're still kind of struggling. A lot of your sketches will look awesome, but then when you're stuck with that 11 by 17 amount of space, you may find out that you either have way too much leftover paper or not enough space to make everything happen that you wanted to. So really consider if you have to make tweaks, what can you adjust, what can be smaller or bigger, and kind of how will that affect the general flow of the infographic. Remember, you want everything to flow. That's the point of the infographic is you want to control what people read first, second, third, so on and so forth. So you can number your steps if you actually have steps, but a lot of you have themes that don't necessarily have step-by-step directions, but you want to figure out a way that you can ensure that people are reading the things you want them to read in the order that you want them to read it in. So on Friday, you don't have anything due today. On Friday at the end of class, I want you to turn it a rough draft. And at the absolute bare minimum, I want it to be a wireframe. If you can go ahead and start adding color and text to it before Friday, awesome. Okay. But if you're still working on collecting information or on doing like little illustrations and things of that nature, that's fine. I understand that. That takes time and you can work on your wireframe. I do encourage you to use icons. You can Google things like medical icons and you'll see all kinds of different like symbols and things that you can use. Some of them will be really useful, some of them won't. It just depends on what you've chosen to do. But you can image trace anything you like. You can image trace any kind of little design elements. So I can add in to a Google search infographic elements. and I can see all kinds of stuff like arrows, different types of boxes, all kinds of different types of shapes. And you can copy that. That's perfectly fine. I don't want you to straight up steal somebody else's online. Like if you happen to be doing how to do CPR, I don't want you to type in infographic how to do CPR and just steal one that already exists. But you're more than welcome to look at stuff that's already out there and create something that's based on a style or on a layout that you've seen before. Okay, you just have to keep it within those parameters that were applied. So, in case you weren't here, or in case you've forgotten, let me just go back over with you really quick what the requirements are. And then mostly today is just going to be a work day for you. Okay, so here are a few, again, previous student examples. They're not necessarily amazing. In fact, the last time that I did this project was actually right before we went into COVID lockdown. So not all of them got completely finished with them. But you can see how they've used the different color palettes and the same fonts that you guys are stuck with now, and they look a little bit different depending on what the topic is. So your options are to choose one of the themes listed, either a medical or political infographic. It needs to be thorough, meaning that you need to actually answer whatever your topic is. The point of an infographic is to provide information, to make it instructional in some capacity. So a lot of you have chosen ones that are kind of for life or death situations, like EpiPens and CPR and the Heimlich maneuver. Make sure that you have enough information that any idiot that happens to read this can figure it out. And I say that with the utmost respect. Expect that people don't always know the same things that you know. Not everybody has the same skill sets that you have or the same basic understandings of things. So you need to write your text as if the person that is reading it is completely clueless and wouldn't know how to do anything without your help. Okay, you do have to stick to those font families that I mentioned before. These are really basic font families. One thing you'll figure out if you do ever work with clients is if they don't have to pay to use a fancy font, they won't. All of these fonts that I picked out are sort of considered like free range fonts. At this point, they've been in the system long enough that they're so common, they're owned by pretty much every major outlet, and you can use them for free without having to pay. Whereas there are lots of other fonts out there that you do have to kind of pay a royalty to, just like if you were to use a stock image or something like that. So these fonts are within that realm, okay, and this color palette that's provided. Now remember, you can include as many illustrations as you want. You can image trace, hand draw, decide to do whatever you would like, but no photographs. Okay, so no actual photographs left over of any kind for this particular project. Everything should ultimately be effective. And you can choose to either make it vertical or horizontal. Okay, a lot of people don't think about doing horizontal, but sometimes that might be the better option for you. It just kind of depends. All right, and your themes, I think most of you at this point have settled on a theme. There were a couple of you that asked me about like some slight tweaks to things, but these are your basic themes that you get to pick from, and these are something I expect you to stick to. Okay, especially the medical ones because a lot of them are kind of heavy topics. I know that you may not take this super seriously, but the goal would be to have a good instructional poster where it actually is a life saving instructional thing. Please don't make it a joke or anything like that. Make sure that all of your text and stuff is valuable. Make sure that you double check your text too. Look at more than one source if you haven't already. I know there were a few of you that kind of came in a little bit later because of absences. Make sure that you really double check and you cross reference stuff to be sure that everything that you've written is actually factual. Okay. Does anybody have any general questions at the moment? Okay. I do recommend, as always, if you can work smarter and not harder, do it. Okay. Quite a few of you in here, I'm actually surprised more of you chose political this time around than medical. Medical is usually the more popular one. Remember, there are a lot of basic political things for some of our topics. You can always type in stuff like, let's see, like Congress building illustration. Okay, and you can use image trace to help guide you with things. that you may want to draw or with symbols. Okay, you could do the same thing with like let's see, like Democrat or Republican symbol, and you can find all of those different things too. So just think about things that you can add visually so that it isn't just text. What else can you add to it? Okay, and just again double check your text. I will mention kind of just quickly too. I mentioned lightly to some of the people closer to my area, but you all finished up brochures over different pathways here at the school right before break. That was your final thing that we were working on. We will start doing class registration next week here at Lafayette. So if you are a sophomore or junior, you all will sign up for your classes next week. The plan is for the brochures to be available. We may not have a whole lot of printed copies by then, but we do want them to be available. I'm waiting for some feedback on some of those, but we may have a few tweaks and changes that are suggested from the different departments on your brochures that we may make later this week or at the beginning of next week. I just wanted to kind of give you a heads up. But overall, everybody seemed very pleased with what you all had created and submitted. So good job. Good job. Okay. All right. So again, today is a work day. Nothing officially due today, but by the end of class on Friday, I do want you to have at least a wireframe infographic rough draft. Excuse me. Remember, you can keep it clean and plain. Like here's one on donations. That's an older like template one from Illustrator. But in Illustrator, when you set up your document, just go to File New. Okay, just type in 11 by 17. It should be on CMYK and on high 300 PPI by default. Okay, and just remember to choose one artboard, unlike me. But just work within those standard parameters. Okay, and you can use as much or as little color as you want. Like this particular one here has very little color. I know some of you really, really hate the palettes. In the past, I had to create one for one of my own school projects and they wanted more color. Like every single time I did a different version of it, they wanted more color than had been there before. So, take it or leave it however you would like, but you can create something that looks pretty despite not necessarily loving the colors that you're given. Just kind of think about how you break up your areas to make sure that everything is visible and easy to read. All right, cool.